I'm going to read some sections from Running in the Family, which is a book about going back to Sri Lanka and after several years and finding out stories about mostly my parents and grandparents. So it's kind of set in the present, but also in the past. Drought since December. All across the city, men roll carts with ice clothed in sawdust. Later on, during a fever, the drought still continuing, his nightmare is that thorn trees in the garden send their hard roots underground towards the house, climbing through windows so they can drink sweat off his body, steal the last of the saliva off his tongue. He snaps on the electricity just before daybreak. For 25 years he has not lived in this country, though up to the age of 11 he slept in rooms like this, with no curtains, just delicate bars across the windows so no one could break in, and the floors of red cement, polished smooth, cool against bare feet. Dawn through a garden, clarity to leaves, fruit, the dark yellow of the king coconut. This delicate light is allowed only a brief moment of the day. In 10 minutes the garden will lie in a blaze of heat, frantic with noise and butterflies. Half a page, and the morning is already ancient. This is a poem I wrote after my niece was singing to me. She's 8 years old, and simultaneously, I just read a thing by Paul Bowles which said, "The Sinhalese are beyond a doubt one of the least musical people in the world. It would be quite impossible to have less sense of pitch, line, or rhythm." And this poem is dedicated to my niece, Hetty Correa, and it's called Sweet Like a Crow. Your voice sounds like a scorpion being pushed through a glass tube, like someone has just trodden a peacock, like wind howling in a coconut, like a rusty Bible, like someone pulling barbed wire across a stone courtyard, like a pig drowning, a vataka being fried, a bone shaking hands, a frog singing at Carnegie Hall, like a crow swimming in milk, like a nose being hit by a mango, a womb full of twins, a pariah dog with a magpie in its mouth, like the midnight jet from Casablanca, like Air Pakistan curry, a typewriter on fire, like a spirit in the gas which cooks your dinner, like 100 papadangs being crunched, like someone uselessly trying to light 3 roses matches in a dark room, the clicking sound of a reef when you put your head into the sea, a dolphin reciting epic poetries to a sleepy audience, the sound of a fan when someone throws brinjals at it, like pineapples being sliced in the Petah market, like Beetlejuice hitting a butterfly in midair, like a whole village running naked onto the street and tearing their sarongs, like an angry family pushing a jeep out of the mud, like dirt on the needle, like 8 sharks being carried on the back of a bicycle, like 3 old ladies locked in the lavatory, like the sound I heard when having an afternoon sleep and someone walked through my room in ankle bracelets. This section is about my father's love of trains. I'll read a part of it. It's called Travels in Ceylon. My father seemed fated to have an obsession with trains all his life. Rail trips became his nemesis. If one was to be blind drunk in the 20s and 30s, one somehow managed it on public transport or on roads that would terrify a sober man with mountain passes, rock cuts, and precipices. Being an officer in the Ceylon Light Infantry, my father was allowed free train passes and became notorious on the Colombo-Trincomalee run. He began quietly enough. In his 20s, he pulled out his army pistol, terrified a fellow officer, John Kothalawala, under the seat, walked through the swaying carriages and threatened to kill the driver unless he stopped the train. The train halted 10 miles out of Colombo at 7:30 in the morning. He explained that he expected the trip to be a pleasant one, and he wanted his good friend Arthur van Langenberg, who had missed the train, to enjoy it with him. The passengers emptied out to wait on the tracks while a runner was sent back to Colombo to get Arthur. After a 2-hour delay, Arthur arrived. John Kothalawala came out from under his seat. Everyone jumped back on. My father put his pistol away, and the train continued on to Trincomalee. I think my father believed that he owned the railway by birthright. He wore the railway as if it was a public suit of clothes. Trains in Ceylon lack privacy entirely. There are no individual compartments, and most of the passengers spend their time walking through carriages, curious to see who else is on board. So people usually knew when Mervyn Ondaatje boarded the train with or without his army revolver. He tended to stop trains more often when in uniform. If the trip coincided with his days of dipsomania, the train could be delayed for hours. Messages would be telegraphed from one station to another to arrange for a relative to meet and remove him from the train. My Uncle Noel was usually called. As he was in the Navy during the war, a naval jeep would roar towards Anuradhapura to pick up the major from the Ceylon Light Infantry. When my father removed all his clothes and leapt from the train, rushing into the Kalugunawa tunnel, the Navy finally refused to follow, and my mother was sent for. He stayed in the darkness of the 3/4-mile-long tunnel for 3 hours, stopping rail traffic going both ways. My mother, clutching a suit of civilian clothing, the army would not allow her to advertise his military connections, walked into that darkness, finding him and talking with him for over an hour and a half, a moment only Conrad could have interpreted. She went in there alone, his clothes in one arm, but no shoes, an oversight he later complained of, and a railway lantern that he shattered as soon as she reached him. They had been married for 6 years. They survived that darkness, and my mother, the lover of Tennyson and early Yeats, began to realize that she had caught on to a different breed of dog. She was to become tough and valiant in a different world from then on, determined when they divorced never to ask him for money. They were both from gracious, genteel families, but my father went down a path unknown to his parents and wife. She followed him and coped with him for 14 years, surrounding his behavior like a tough and demure breeze, talking him out of suicide in a 3/4-mile-long tunnel, for God's sake. She walked in armed with the clothes she had borrowed from another passenger, and a light, and a knowledgeable love of all the beautiful, formal poetry that existed up to the 1930s, to meet her naked husband in the darkness, in the black, slow breeze of the Kalugunawa tunnel. Unable to find him until he rushed at her, grabbed that lantern and dashed it against the wall before he realized who it was, who had come for him. "It's me." Then a pause and, "How dare you follow me?" "I followed you because no one else would follow you." If you look at my mother's handwriting from the 30s on, it has changed a good deal from her youth. It looks wild, drunk. The letters are much larger and billow over the pages, almost as if she has changed hands. Reading her letters, we thought that the blue aerograms were written in 10 seconds flat. But once my sister saw her writing, and it was the most labored process, her tongue twisting in her mouth, as if that scrawl was the result of great discipline, as if at the age of 30 or so she had been blasted, forgotten how to write, lost the use of a habitual style, and forced herself to cope with a new, dark, unknown alphabet.